Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hadfield. This week I'm joined by Max Scoville, host of Podcast Beyond, and Ryan McCaffrey, host of Podcast Unlocked. And we need to talk about the Nintendo Switch 2. It's coming up on its first birthday. You probably remember a year ago when Nintendo fully revealed the Switch successor. It had to delay pre-orders while it waited to see what happened with the US tariff situation. In the end, Nintendo put the Switch 2 on sale for $450. And has remained at that price for nearly a year now, in spite of increased costs on Switch 2 accessories, the original Switch, and competitors Xbox and PlayStation 5. But according to a new report from Bloomberg, the pressure is on Nintendo to raise the price. Now, the Switch 2 has been selling very well. It sold 17 million units in under a year, and at one point was the fastest selling console in US history. But Nintendo's stock price has not followed the same trajectory. In fact, its stock price has cratered roughly 45% over the last 6 months. Now, Nintendo faces scrutiny from shareholders over whether it will finally budge on the Switch 2 launch price after raising the price of pretty much everything else. I should caveat all this by pointing out that we're recording this on Wednesday this week, and Nintendo's latest financial earnings are on the day you're probably watching this, Friday, May 8th. Now, when it comes to setting a price for a console, PlayStation and Xbox have typically sold their hardware at a loss, at least at launch. Nintendo has traditionally tried its best to avoid doing this. From the NES and the Game Boy all the way through the original Nintendo Switch, Nintendo's hardware strategy has relied on using slightly older, highly optimized, off-the-shelf components. By avoiding cutting-edge, expensive chip manufacturing, it could sell its hardware at an affordable price to families while maintaining a positive profit margin on every box sold, with a few notable exceptions. I believe Nintendo intendoed to continue this tradition with the Switch 2. Teardowns of the console at launch found that the raw components cost about $340. I think the intention was that after manufacturing, shipping, tariffs, and retailers took their cut, Nintendo would still make a small profit on each unit sold. But of course, the cost of RAM has skyrocketed. That affects Nintendo too, has probably eaten away whatever profit margin the Switch 2 had. When you look at it this way, it starts to seem like a price hike is inevitable. Okay, but how much? $50? $100? One analyst told Bloomberg that even a $100 price increase would mean the console was made less of a burden to Nintendo rather than truly profitable. So, Max. There are very rare instances where Nintendo was willing to take a loss on hardware. The GameCube launched at a for-profit $200, but was getting bodied by the PS2, so Nintendo dropped it to $100. Same thing happened with the 3DS. It got a 40% price drop after 6 months. The Wii U was sold at a loss at launch because that gamepad was very expensive to make, but then Nintendo was right back to selling the Switch for profit at launch. So, do you think investors are worried because this is not the way Nintendo has traditionally done things?
It's hard to gauge what Nintendo has traditionally done. They've been around since like the Meiji era, like they're a very old company. They have deep coffers. Historically, they have sold things, at face value, which is a rarity, especially in the electronic space. And I think the fact that they operate in not really, we lump them in with Sony and Microsoft, but it's Microsoft makes software and Sony makes consumer electronics, and Nintendo is ostensibly a toy company. Like they are thinking of families. They are trying to get these, devices into the hands of kids. And you can't really do that if it's a really, really expensive thing. So the shareholders, I don't know how much perspective they have on the matter. They probably know more about what they're talking about than I do, but I do think it shows a certain amount of kind of short-sightedness, sort of impatience, because once you raise the price, that doesn't really, that doesn't really make people want to run out and buy things, unless, exactly. You're counting the week leading up to the price hike, like we just saw with the PS5. I could see Nintendo, again, they've tried to offset this so many different ways with raising the price of almost literally everything but the Switch 2. I think actually just about. But the clever thing is that they did that Mario Kart bundle, and I think a lot of people paid $500 for the Mario Kart bundle that included a game that was selling separately for $80. And I don't know what their plan is here, if they are going to raise the price, but I could see them doing a little bit of like a kind of a sleight of hand. If you recall, when the 3DS got its price hike, there was the Ambassador program, which was really smart on Nintendo's part, because it basically made all of the early adopters who kind of paid an arm and a leg for that thing day one. It made them feel a little bit special by giving them, I think it was like 10 NES games and 10 Game Boy Advance games, which, were long since paid for. Nintendo was not, sweating giving those away for free. I could see Nintendo doing something similar. I don't know if that means making Mario Kart World just a default pack-in for the system, which now costs $500 flat rate, or if they figure out some other solution there. But yeah, I mean, the thing that's kind of odd to me is, Yeah, hardware sales are bleak right now. Like we're in a weird time for that. All the RAM shortages, the tariff stuff, that's odd. Meanwhile, Nintendo has broken into Hollywood. They're doing crazy numbers.
Yeah.
The Super Mario Galaxy movie is the highest grossing movie of the year right now. I mean, that's probably going to change when Avengers rolls along or whatever, but it's still doing really, really well. They've got Zelda coming out next year. They've got some mystery project a year after that. They've got I think it's the fourth Super Nintendo Land opening up in Singapore sometime in the next few years. So yeah, with the state of hardware being in flux, I feel like Nintendo's being very smart and kind of diversifying its revenue streams. And it's just kind of, I don't know, it's kind of odd to see the shareholders be like, charge them more. And it's like, is that going to make people like Nintendo? They currently look like the good guy right now. And I feel like they probably want to keep it that way. You know?
I don't really get it. You say the shareholders probably know more. I don't know. Like you've got this hugely successful console, at least in terms of just raw sales numbers. You've got a movie in theaters that's close to hitting $1 billion. No, let's take the stock price down 45%. I don't really get it. Ryan, we've seen price increases for both PS5 and Xbox Series X. Xbox has had more than one price increase over the past year, but those consoles were years into their lifespans. If Nintendo succumbs to investor pressure, raises the price of the Switch to less than a year after launch, potentially, does that affect their image more? Does it seem like they have less confidence in their product, or they don't know how to price their latest console? Like, what does that mean, do you think?
Well, the problem, as I see it, certainly a higher price console prevents certain people. That's every bit of money you go up, that's some people are going to have to draw the line and say, no, I can't purchase that. But what Nintendo's been so successful at, way more so than Microsoft or even Sony, is how much money they have made off of their key software. Whereas it's a good day for Sony if they do 10 million copies of God of War or what have you, and and there's nothing wrong with 10 million copies. Nintendo's a company that does 20 to 30 million copies sold of their bigger franchises, the mainline Zelda games, the mainline Mario games, the bigger stuff that they've got, the Animal Crossings of the world. And the thing is, as we've talked about before over the last year here on Next Gen Console Watch, none of those games are on the horizon. Nintendo kind of, with development cycles getting longer, even for Nintendo on their less powerful hardware, there's no new 3D Mario in sight. 3D Zelda is still probably many years away. That we talked about the leak, the apparent leak that seemingly an Ocarina of Time remake is upon us, but even that, like, there's a ceiling of software sales on a pure remake of an old game like that. It's still going to sell well, I'm sure, but it's not going to do Tears of the Kingdom numbers. It's not going to do Super Mario Odyssey numbers. So, if you're raising the price of hardware as Nintendo and you don't have those killer app games to bring people, to make people want to pay more to get the hardware, I don't know how that ends well for Nintendo or their stock price if you're the shareholder that's demanding that Nintendo charge more for the hardware. So, I don't see how the raising of a potential raise of the price makes any sense without a killer lineup that Nintendo doesn't seem to have right now, at least for the foreseeable near future.
To illustrate your point about just how sales of first-party Nintendo software dwarfs other companies, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has sold over 70 million copies.
Wow.
Animal Crossing New Horizons, 50 million copies. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, 37 million. Breath of the Wild, 34 million. You can go on, even like Super Mario Party, 21 million units sold. The best-selling game on PS5. The best-selling game is Marvel's Spider-Man 2, 17 million. That's the gulf there.
Yeah.
Max, do you think we've been in this rocky economic climate long enough that Nintendo could raise the price of the Switch 2 to $500 and people would go, yeah, that sounds about right?
Unfortunately, yeah. It kind of seems like it. They've got to be in an interesting spot here where how do you sugarcoat it? Like I mentioned earlier, there could be some sort of ambassador program shaped thing. There could be a bigger emphasis on bundles. There's the way that you obscure the higher price with a perception of more added value. That's one solution. The other is to kind of weather the storm and just see if they can ride it out and things improve or if things go down in price. The other thing is if they do instill a price hike, if they didn't introduce a price hike, doing so with the plan of having a price cut at some point seems, I would say, more in line with Nintendo. Like I feel like they're usually pretty good about towards the end of hardware's life cycle, just really pricing it for everybody. Like I think some of their success comes from the fact that like their handhelds or their consoles toward the end, they're really affordable. Like kids can buy them. They're not the same degree of high-end consumer electronics that you see with PlayStation and Xbox. It sucks though. Like we're in a really bleak time for a lot of stuff, but for anybody who wants to just buy a cool video game system and kind of escape all the nonsense, like it's pretty expensive to do so for a lot of really weird, complicated reasons. And yeah, we've said it before, but this console generation's I guess killer feature is having price hikes mid console life cycle rather than price cuts. And you can bet Nintendo has top minds gathered around a table trying to figure out what they're supposed to do right here. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me, and that's a bummer.
Yeah, feels bad, man. Ryan, what do you think? Does a Switch 2 price increase, is it sounding more and more likely to happen?
I mean, for reasons you both just laid out in the larger macroeconomic picture, yeah, it unfortunately does. I don't have to like it, and I don't like it, but it does seem like the odds are much greater that it will happen than that it won't happen. So yeah, I mean, I'll be honest, I have not used my Switch 2 a ton in the first year. I've had fun with Mario Kart at launch and with Donkey Kong Bonanza, a couple other things here and there. But I did buy it. I wanted to get it at launch last year in part for this exact reason. Just knowing that we were in this tariff nightmare for probably the foreseeable future. And I'm not going to feel any better about if I end up sort of being proven right for wanting to buy my system at launch, because that might be the cheapest time to get it. But it is unfortunately looking increasingly like that may indeed prove out to be the case. Yeah.
Well, viewers, and I'm not on Nintendo's payroll, but like Ryan was saying, I personally feel it's starting to seem inevitable. So I really like my Switch 2 a lot. It gets a lot of use in my household. If you were thinking about getting one at any time in the future, there's probably no upside to waiting on getting one at this point. Before we go, we got a new poll for you to vote on. There's all these trendy game genres that are popular right now. Which one's your favorite? There's boomer shooters, extraction shooters, cozy games, roguelikes, Vampire Survivors likes, or friend slop, which is a new genre that I've just become aware of. So what's your favorite of these new trendy genres? You can vote at IGN.com or on Spotify. The day this episode goes live, we'll share the results with you next week, just like we can with last episode's poll. We were talking about how Game Pass got a price drop, $7 price drop off of that big increase after $30 from last year. So we want to know, if you cancel Game Pass after that price increase, will you resubscribe to Ultimate now? 46% said nope, still too expensive. But Ryan, 11% said yes, they're going to resubscribe. I don't know. Do you think that's would Xbox be happy with the needle moving that much?
Well, maybe initially, and we did hear the new Xbox CEO Ashish Sharma say pretty clearly that they're not done tinkering with the Game Pass tiers yet. So those poll numbers to me would suggest that there's more work for Microsoft to do to try and reach the 46% that said they are not yet ready to come back.
Yeah. Well, I'm ready to dive into Forza Horizon 6 this month. Viewers, listeners, you've probably heard that IGN Live 2026 is right around the corner. It's actually 1 month from today, the day that we're taping this. The 2-day celebration of gaming and entertainment will take place June 6th and 7th, downtown LA. It'll be filled with celebrity panels, exclusive game reveals, live stage shows, giveaways, much more. As part of IGN's 30th anniversary celebration, we're giving away 30 free IGN Live tickets a day. So just go to live.ign.com and use code IGN30promo to get your free ticket. We will see you there. And that's our show. Thank you to Max and Ryan. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes to make this show possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next week with more of the latest gaming hardware. We'll see you then. This episode of Next Gen Console Watch was produced by Damon Hadfield, Jobert Atienza, and Sam Claiborne. Damon is also the host, and Max Scoville and Ryan McCaffrey serve as regular panelists. Technical direction is by Jobert Atienza, with technical production by Marian Franzen and Amir Rakib. Audio engineering is handled by Amir Rakib. Post-production editing is by Jobert Atienza, and graphic design is by Justin Vachon. Next Gen Console Watch is an IGN production and part of the Geek Media Network.